Good afternoon. My name is Ian from C Learning, and welcome to this afternoon's webinar. And I'm pleased to see everybody joining us today. We're going to be recording today's presentation, and the link will be shared by Paul to all of the delegates after the presentation. During the presentation, please use the live chat to ask any questions, and we'll pick those questions up and answer them, pass them over to Harvey, and we'll also answer any of the questions towards the end of the presentation. I'd like to thank the teams at ASA and Intel for their support for today's webinar, and it's my privilege to be able to introduce Harvey McCarthy, the head teacher at Farley Junior School in North Yorkshire. I've worked with Harvey and his staff and students for the last 3 years, and I'm sure we're all really looking forward to Harvey sharing their experiences of moving to the cloud and the impact that it's made for the teachers and students at the school. So Harvey, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ian, and good afternoon, everybody. It's always a little bit strange doing this kind of thing because I'm talking at a computer screen. I can't see you guys out there. So it does make it a little bit one-sided from both of our points of view, I guess. But I don't think Ian mentioned there, I think you have the opportunity to ask some questions on your screens. Is that the left-hand side, Ian? Are you with me, Ian?
Yeah. On the right-hand side of the webinar, they're able to type, and we've got people from across the country, from Devon to London, and places sort of in between. So they're all sharing their locations.
Excellent stuff. So, yeah. Please, as we go through this, use the opportunity to ask those questions down the right-hand side. It'll make it a lot more interactive for yourselves, but it'll also give me a bit of reassurance that people are still with me. So if you don't mind doing that, I think that would really help proceedings for everybody. So yes, this afternoon then, I'm going to attempt in the time that we have, to explain a little bit about how we moved to the cloud as a school with one-to-one Chromebooks, how we implemented G Suite or Google Apps for Education as it was known at the time, and the impact that's had on our learners. So I shall start at the beginning. So a little bit about our school. 40% more or less of our children are pupil premium children and eligible for that funding. And in 2014, when we just were at the start of this project, our results were about 10% below the national average. And we were really struggling with what we could do next. We were kind of thinking, well, you know, we've done such a lot of work on the teaching and learning element. Our marking and feedback we felt was some of the best around. We spent an awful lot of time with that, teachers and children spending a lot of time on that. And when we dug a little bit deeper, we kind of came up with this hypothesis that we felt within the writing process, there wasn't really opportunity for our children to do a really good job of producing a second draft. So they would do their first draft of writing, teacher would mark it, give them feedback, there would be peer assessment and so on. But it was very difficult then for the children to do some meaningful redrafting. We would end up with a few words changed here and there, that we'd have an arrow and an asterisk moving something around, maybe another paragraph inserted, but that would be about it. And so we felt that that was where we needed to throw some of our energy in trying to make that a little bit more productive for the pupils. And so we came up with the idea that we needed an IT solution for this. That would allow us much greater flexibility with the redrafting process. So we had a vision for this. We knew what we wanted to achieve. And I think that's so important if you are going along this line, it's really important that you're not doing it for the sake of the IT. You must have a vision for what you are wanting to achieve. And for us, it was all about this improving writing and the redrafting process. And when we narrowed that down, when we started looking for solutions, we came up with the idea, well, we need a keyboard. You know, we're wanting to do writing, so a keyboard's kind of really important. We needed it to be affordable. As with all schools, our budget is only limited, and there was only so much that we could afford to spend on this project. So it had to come in with a reasonable budget. And then the third thing that we'd looked at was the manageability, because we found as a school we didn't employ an IT technician. We brought in services, and occasionally we would get frustrated with that, in so much as if we had an IT problem in school, we needed somebody to be there to sort that out, and sometimes we'd be waiting for a while. So we wanted really something that was manageable, and that was also reliable, I guess. So looking at a few solutions, we looked at iPads initially. At the time, many schools were buying in lots of iPads. So we looked at that, and well, it didn't really tick the box for keyboards, and likewise on the affordability, they were a little bit beyond our price range. So we then said, okay, keyboards are important, let's look at laptops. And again, affordability was a bit of an issue, but also the manageability. Our school at the time, each class had about 3 or 4 laptops, but they were in various states of disrepair. Some of them were working fine, others would be working incredibly slowly, others would crash every 2 minutes, some had keys missing and that sort of thing. And I'm sure you recognise that picture in your own schools. And so we looked at Android tablets. Again, no keyboard. Manageability and affordability was good. We looked at Bluetooth keyboards to go with those. But we didn't really feel that for prolonged periods of work, using a Bluetooth keyboard was really an option. And then what happened kind of fortuitously was a school down the road from us had got a class set of Chromebooks, and it just so happened that I had a member of staff whose partner worked at that school, and they mentioned it to me one day and said, you should go and have a look at these Chromebooks. So I got in touch with the school, and sure enough, they'd been given a class set of Chromebooks on trial for a sort of 3 or 4 week period. And I went along to see that, and in the class that we're using those, the children were doing some word processing, and they were doing some research, and there was a few children doing the sort of interactive online resource stuff. And these Chromebooks, yeah, they looked like a nice idea, and there was nothing really with them that I could see was any different to a traditional laptop particularly. And then after the lesson, a kind of turning point happened, a light bulb moment, where the IT technician and the teacher that was in charge of that class at the time took me into the staff room, and we started talking about the Chromebooks and things. And they said, oh, sometimes we do some planning together. And they showed me how, got 3 Chromebooks in the room, we all logged on, and one of the members of staff brought up a document and shared it with the other member of staff, and they shared it with me. And all 3 of us were on the same document, typing at the same time. And at that point, it really was, lights went on in my mind, and I just thought, wow, imagine that, if we could do that in a classroom full of children, where 2 children or 6 children or even the whole class of children could all be working on a document at the same time, collaborating, seeing what each other are doing. That could be a massive turning point in what we do with education. And from that point on, I was sold. And so then started digging around a little bit more, got various Chromebooks into school to trial. In the end, we ended up going for Intel-powered Acer Chromebooks, which the guys at C Learning provided for us. They had the keyboards. The management of them, when we looked into that, is very, very simple. I can roll out an application, a new app, to the whole of our school within 2 minutes. If just one class want an app, I can do exactly the same. The security, everything around them is absolutely first class, very easy to use and very quick. Budget-wise, at the time, we paid probably about £160 for the Chromebooks that we bought. And the way I sold that to governors was, well, children are at our school for a period of 4 years. If we spend £160 on them by giving them a Chromebook, that works out at about £40 per year. Since then, Ian and I, we were just doing some calculations the other day, and we said, okay, so that's the price of the hardware, but then let's add into that the cost of internet service provision. And we have 2 BT business lines coming into school. Price of the Chromebook, price of that internet service, and then we also buy into a system called Go Guardian, which is a filtering system, a little bit like Smooth Walls and things like that you'll already have in school. But the reason we buy into that is our children take their Chromebooks home at night, and so it filters whilst they're off-site as well as when they're in the school. But even then, we work out that they come in below £60 per year per child, which, if you look at that on what can you buy of traditional resources, you know, a few reading books, a few textbooks and some paints, pencils and pens, £60 soon goes. We've had the Acer Chromebooks now for 3 years, and the majority of them are still in school. We do give the children the opportunity to buy them. So we sell them at the end of year 6, so children can buy them off us for a reduced price, and then we plough that money back into providing new ones. But about 50% of them at the end of year 6 just go back down to our children joining the school in year 3, and they are recycled in that way. They're still going strong. We don't have any problems other than we have the odd broken screen, but they are very easy to replace and things. The batteries are still going well on them, so they've really ticked all those boxes around keyboards, budgets and manageability. Okay, get the Chromebooks in. You've really got to win staff over. Staff development, you've got to get that into your plan of how you are going to implement this. We brought the Chromebooks into school in the Easter and gave every staff member, including teaching assistants, a Chromebook. And we explained that this was where we would go in, and the vision was that by the September, every child in school would have one. And so over that period from Easter to summer, we then did a little bit of Chromebook training at each staff meeting. We would have a little bit of input. I think what's very important is you give teachers some quick wins. We have presentations, a bit like PowerPoint presentations. We'll come on to this in a moment. It's the stuff that's built into the Chromebooks called G Suite. If you imagine a PowerPoint presentation, but every child in the class has a slide on that presentation. Once you've created that, which takes a matter of minutes, you can then recycle that for so many different tasks. So if you're doing about the Romans, every child can put their information onto a slide about the Romans, and at the end of a session, you've very quickly there got a full class presentation all about the Romans. But likewise, you can use that for writing activities or for maths activities and so on. So things like that really win your staff over. In our first year, we also put the use of Chromebooks and developing Chromebook ideas into each member of staff's performance management. So we really raised the profile of this. We also had in school 2 or 3 Chrome champions, so they were members of staff who were really keen to see this project going, and they were the ones that really led this and kept the initiative alive, always really enthusiastic about it, giving other staff ideas. And I think every school probably has 1 or 2 of these kind of people who are, just that little bit more techie than the rest of them and want to really get those new ideas, get those on board, give it them as a leadership opportunity, and they can really drive this for the rest of your staff. A bit later on, we also introduced a Chrome Council. That's our pupils. So it's a bit like the school council, but their job is to just talk about what happens online, e-safety, are children using things appropriately, are there any issues, and also train them up a little bit more to be just that little bit more proficient than the rest of the pupils. And we also, through Ian and Paul, we got some training from C Learning, and C Learning can provide a lot of that in-house training either to just individuals or to your whole staff, and they'll really get that ball going quickly for you. But very important, get the staff on board. Another quick anecdote. When we introduced these to the staff, we said to staff, okay, so from now on, from this point onwards, all our communication in school, we'll do it via email. We don't want to see children running around with post-it notes, passing messages at 3 o'clock in the afternoon about something that's happening after school. The second staff meeting, I asked all the staff to, I sent an email and asked all the staff to bring along some documents to the staff meeting. And the staff meeting came, and half the staff brought along the documents that I asked for and the other half didn't. And when asked, they said, oh, we didn't know about it. And of course, our reply was, well, we emailed you. And literally from that point on, it wasn't a threatening sort of message that we put out there. It was just, we're having a change. We're going to do it via email. It's very quick, very easy. And from that point on, staff were on board and they were accessing email, which meant that they were then looking at some of the other things that were in there, and it very quickly snowballed. Hope you're still with me. Let's go on to talk about writing, because really that's what it's all about. This is why we're here. What about the standards?
Yeah, so, Harvey, can I just ask one question?
Yes, of course.
In terms of the Google Apps that you introduced to the staff and to the students and to your admin staff and governors, can you just share with everybody what the Google Apps include, sort of from forms to classroom and whatever else? Because I think it's important as we move into the writing and numeracy bits.
Yeah, absolutely, Ian. So Chromebooks come pre-installed really with, I say pre-installed, it's all online, but they are made to run Google Apps, which have now been rebadged as G Suite, but I might switch between those two terminologies. Google Apps, G Suite, it's the same thing. If you think of Microsoft Office, it's very much that. So you get a word processor, that's called Docs. You get a spreadsheet, that's called Sheets. You get a presentation tool, that's called Slides. So those three things very much are in line with Microsoft Word and Excel and PowerPoint. Great thing is as well, they are compatible with those apps as well. So if you've got a Word document that's been emailed to you, it's fine. Google Docs will open that up fine. You can read it, you can edit it, and then you can send it back. You can keep it as a Google Doc, or you can transfer it back into a Microsoft Word document. So real good transferability there. So that is sort of your core three applications, a little bit like Office. But what Google Apps G Suite also has a fantastic tool called Forms. This is like a questionnaire generator where you can create online questionnaires. You can then send them out to the whole school, to a class of children, to whatever group you wish. They can then answer those questionnaires, a little bit like SurveyMonkey or something like that, answer them online, but then you get all the information back. It's already been analysed. It's in bar graphs, it's in pie charts, it shows you where there are trends and so on. We'll do a little bit about that later in the presentation. Actually, I've got a slide to show people on that. But that is a great tool for assessments, for a little bit of assessment for learning stuff, for an end of topic assessment. But we also use it for things like pupil voice and parent voice and staff voice. If there's something we want to ask pupils' opinion on, we can send that out at lunchtime, and by 3 o'clock, every child in the school has answered it, and it's all been analysed for us.
That's great, Harvey, and I think as you go through the impact that it's had on the writing and reading and numeracy, it'll start to answer many of the questions that the audience is posting. It does seem that quite a number of them are already in the process of rolling out sort of Google Apps. So congratulations to the people who shared that information. Just one question before we jump into the writing bit, which I know a lot of people are keen to understand how you've been able to achieve the impact that you have. Did you replace all of your infrastructure with Chromebooks? So effectively, every student and member of staff in the school have got a Chromebook, and in terms of sharing it through the projectors or interactive whiteboards, how do you do that whole class activity?
Yeah, no problem. So all the children, when we introduced these in the September, we gave one to every child, and every child had a named Chromebook. The idea of that being that they would then look after it. You know, if it's your Chromebook, you have responsibility of looking after that. So we didn't go down the line of having a class set and children just take one from the class. So as far as the pupils were concerned, yes, it was an almost overnight, we're moving from our traditional Windows-based platform to Chrome. To be honest, the children didn't really notice, you know, the skills that they'd already established in Word and Excel just transferred over. It wasn't a problem. In our second year, and again, I'll go on to talk about this a little bit more later on, we moved the staff over as well and the admin and everything. So as a school now, we are completely Chrome-based. We are completely cloud-based. We don't have a Windows server in school anymore. We don't have any Windows machine other than the one that that's connected to the photocopier, which just manages print jobs and things like that. So as a school, we are now completely Chrome, yes. But I think that's something that you want to just plan ahead for, you know, be careful with it. You want to make sure that you've got everything in place as you make that move, and also make sure it's right for you, you know, and we had to win people over and show them that actually this is probably a better way of doing it. So there's that part of it. As for what happens in the class with projectors and things like that, initially we still had traditional laptops hooked up to projectors, and so staff were preparing their work on G Suite, on Docs and things like that, and then they were logging into their account. And this is worth saying, you can access G Suite and Google Apps for Education on a Windows-based machine or on an iPad or on your phones, and it transfers over fine. It's just the Chromebooks are kind of made for it, run it incredibly well, it's native to them, and they run it for a lot less of your budget, because the Chromebooks do come in very cheap. So initially, the teachers were displaying using a traditional laptop and a projector. In our school, we found that a lot of the time the teachers weren't using the interactivity very much of an interactive whiteboard. And so we'd already started replacing interactive whiteboards with either a normal whiteboard and a projector or a TV screen. In a very short amount of time, many of our staff started saying to me, can I get rid of my laptop? I don't want it anymore. Can you just get me a Chromebook that will connect into the projector? And so what we now do is each of the classrooms has a projector or a large display television, and we hook up to those a thing called a Chrome box, which is basically a Chromebook without a screen. It's a small little box, sits on the wall, and you just plug your TV into it. And then we use wireless keyboards and mice, and so the teacher can be anywhere in the classroom and can interact with the display. We can hand the keyboard over to a child and they can type on it. We can hand the mouse over to a child and they can do the interaction on the whiteboard and things like that. And it works great, works incredibly well. We've started playing now with systems where you can mirror a child's screen up onto the big display and things like that. So really flexible system. And again, really, really good value for money. The budget side of it is fantastic. And anything that a teacher has done on their own Chromebook, as soon as they come into school, log into the Chromebooks, it's there. Everything just transfers over via the cloud. You don't have to do anything. It's just there for you.
That's great. That's great. So let's move on to the writing bit now, I think.
Yeah, great stuff. So when we introduced this, we were looking at, we do about 50% of our work now on Chromebooks and about 50% of it traditional pen and paper methods. We do use Google Apps for Education, the things I was talking about, they are the core of everything we do. And it's how you use those that gives you the impact. It's not an overnight kind of, well, if we introduce this, we're going to have success. You have to think about how you are using it. And as you go on that journey, you will find, or we certainly found, it changes your everything. It changes policy in school, your teaching, learning, assessment, behavior, handwriting. It changes all of those things because you want to make the best use of these tools. And in doing so, it has knock-on effects into other things. But on top of those apps, those sort of core ones, we do add a couple of other things in there. Read and Write is an extension, which is a sort of an add-on. It's free for pupils. It's free for teachers. It gives a fantastic text-to-speech engine. It's aimed primarily at children with SEN. However, we use it across the school. Everybody in the school uses it, even staff at times. So if you imagine a child produces a piece of text, or you produce a piece of text, you then can get the Chromebook to talk back to you. It speaks to you what you have just written. But it does it really well. It sounds very, very good. And through doing that, the children and yourself, you can pick up where you've perhaps made an error, you perhaps used the same word twice, you perhaps missed out a comma or a full stop. And so, fantastic way for the children to do some self-assessment without them having to just read what they think they've written. What it also provides you with is we provide all our feedback on the Chromebook, and we do that via using comments. We'll look at those in a moment. But what you can do for your SEN children is, rather than writing their feedback, if they're going to have troubles and difficulties kind of getting anything from that, you can record yourself saying it. So you can say, well done, you've done a good job of your this, that, and the other. Now let's try and do the areas for development. And the child can listen to that. And those pieces of audios can even be linked to specific sections of text or specific words or perhaps the whole text. So they can see exactly which part of the text you are talking about when you give them that feedback. So that's an excellent app that we use. We also use one called Word Cloud Generator. That, you'll have seen this sort of stuff. It gives you this kind of thing. So a child can, again, look at the text they've written, and they can pull out what vocabulary they've used the most. So if you have a child that uses he, she, the, them, and, said a lot, it will really pull that out, and they can start thinking, well, is there another word that might be more useful? Our marking and feedback has changed. We've started using a thing that we call the tame table. That's sort of, it's our term, we've made that up. But basically, it's this sort of thing, and that goes at the top of every piece of work. And you will have, I'm sure, be using very similar things in your own schools, perhaps creating them and photocopying them and so on. Learning objective up at the top. And then what are the success criteria? And then we have an area where children can self-assess, an area where children peer assess. So we have in our school collaboration partners. Every child has a collaboration partner that they work with for the term, and they do each other's marking, they provide each other feedback, but they know each other's targets and they get to know each other's styles. And so they know what each other are reading and working on. So they can provide some really good insight into each other's work. And then the teacher, on the first draft, they mark the piece of work, and then on the final draft, they mark it as well. And the tame, comes from the T, means it's a target, so perhaps an area that they don't feel they've done very well on. A is you have almost met that criteria. M being you have met that criteria, and D being you have exceeded in that criteria. It just makes the focus of the marking very much more around the success criteria and the learning objective, and of course also cuts down on time that is spent marking. I mentioned earlier about marking and using comments. These are comments, so this is one of our teachers here. They put a comment onto this piece of work and said, well done, some good vocabulary choices. Next step, can you vary the way you open your sentence? A lot of yours begin with the pronoun or the. So This is the child can look at that and okay, and it can open up a dialogue then. Show you a little bit about that in a moment. So that's the TAME table, how we mark our work. Collaboration partners, I mentioned them there. Every child in school has a partner that they work with. Here's a piece of work. In fact, it's probably that same piece of work based around, I think, is it Littlewoods or John Lewis advert? Other department stores are available. The Christmas thing where there's the bear and the hare. And this is a piece of writing where these two children, one of them has been writing this from the bear's point of view. The other child has been writing it from the hare's point of view, and they will have worked on this at the same time. So whilst the bear's writing their bit, the hare is writing their part and bouncing ideas off each other for those points of view. What then happens is we peer assess. Now, on this piece of work, the two children have worked together on this. However, it could be that just Freya worked on this piece of work and Amy gave her the feedback. We can see here Freya, and this will be linked to, I assume, this area. Well done for opening a sentence like this, and now you've made me feel amazed at what you can do. And here, Amy's put Freya, smiley face, because. So what Amy's saying there is, Freya, I like this bit, can you tell me why? And that'll be relating to this part here. And Freya's put, it's because it's a question. I should point out this is a screen capture. If this was the actual document, if I clicked onto this, it would tell me exactly where it's relating to. But you can see those highlighted areas. That means that these are relating to some of those. So some of these codes, again, we didn't know we were going to start using these. It happened, it evolved over time. And this is where I was saying it changes your policy. And we are forever rewriting now. I think our teaching, learning, and assessment policy gets updated about every 3 months because we're forever, it's forever going through this process and this ongoing mutation of how it's going to work next. So there you can see a little bit about how the marking works, peer assessment, and so on. And as I say, we do that through collaboration partners. That's just the term we gave it. What I've not mentioned at the moment is handwriting and spelling, because those are the two things which, whenever you begin this discussion with parents, with governors and so on, that's what they're concerned about. What about the handwriting if they're typing all day? So we thought long and hard about this, and we introduced what we call the line of expectation. It's a very grand title. And it's something actually, you know, every school should do this. It shouldn't be about the use of Chromebooks or IT. It's just good practice. And all we do, beginning of every piece of work, the children do this. They do one line of handwriting, and the teacher will do this as a taught skill. So in this case, it's probably to do with the join from an O to a G. It could be with forming that O or C shape and bringing it round onto this one. But that's not quite the point. Whilst we are teaching a line of handwriting there, and it is literally one line of handwriting, the idea of it is really it just sets the expectation for the rest of that piece of work. Because I think we've all been in those positions as teachers where you do some handwriting and it's beautiful. And then you ask the children to get on with their work and you think that's not the same child. It's completely different. So by doing this, it sets an expectation that that is your handwriting. That's the handwriting you can do. I now expect it to be the same for the rest of this piece of work. And so through adopting this, I feel that handwriting has actually not been detrimented at all. In fact, if anything, I think handwriting's improved in school through this technique. Spelling, again, it would be very easy to say, okay, children, you spelled something wrong, use the spell check. That's not what we do, you know. And again, this is a process that we've been through and took a month, 2 months, 3 months, I don't know. It evolved over time. But what we do now is we do have the spell checkers turned on. So straight away, if a child spells something wrong, they can see they've spelt it wrong. Little red wiggly line underneath the word. As far as I'm concerned, that's great because they're getting immediate feedback, which means so much more than getting their feedback the next day when the teacher's marked their book and said, you've spelled that wrong. They can see it in the context of their writing. But we have this little mantra, and you know, this is built into the policy, and it's very much, I go around school asking children about this. What do you do if you spell something wrong? We have to try it again. And by try it again, we mean, you know, you use your spelling skills, your phonics skills, your sight. Does it look right? Let's try changing that. If it's still spelled wrong, then we try it again. And if after that third time of having a go, it's still spelled wrong, you can then check it. And by check it, yes, we use the spell checker at times, and at other times we get the children to use a dictionary. But they check the word, our famous school bell in the background. They check the word, they then have to write the word either on a whiteboard or on paper, and then they type the word. And I think by doing that, that's really committing that to a longer term memory. It's putting it into the context of their writing. And certainly we found our spelling results and the standard of spelling went up quite markedly, really, after introducing the Chromebooks. So it's not that handwriting and spelling aren't a problem. You've just got to think of how are you going to tackle that. So let's look at the data then. A year after we started this project, I don't know that I've made enough there in talking about those things, about the amount of collaboration that goes on. You know, there's on Google Apps, when you're in a document, there's this little blue button called the share button. You press that, you share your work with then whoever it is you want to share with. And we get children at home at night writing stories and then sharing it with their collaboration partner or somebody else in school. And they're doing the marking and feedback at home on their own without us even directing it. And it's all about that collaboration that's happening all the time. And it's happening within the classroom, it's happening between classrooms, it's happening across the school, between year groups. You can collaborate, you can share your work with another child in another class. So you can imagine where you've got parallel classes doing similar things, it makes for some great discussion work and for some real engagement, really, from the pupils. So data then. After our first year, our writing results had gone up by almost 20%. So it took us from being below the national average to being above the national average. What was great is we also found that the effect it had had on children from disadvantaged backgrounds was much more marked than it had on the other children. So yes, it had brought our writing results up as a whole, but it had really helped close that attainment gap as well between our disadvantaged groups. Second year on, we found our attainment was generally in line with the national average. So this is as we've moved. So these are 2016 results. So we were generally in line with the national average on the new assessment procedures. However, when we looked at progress from Key Stage 1, we found for schools like ours, we were in the top 40% nationally in reading, top 20% in maths and top 10% in writing. So although our actual attainment was only average, the progress children were making was way above average. So from the starting points, they'd done very well to get to those national averages. Yes, sorry.
Yeah. Is it possible to say what the parents' reaction has been to this whole change in the delivery of teaching and learning, both in school and at home?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go back to that last slide while we talk about that, actually. Initially, spelling, handwriting, we had some concerns around that. We also had some concerns around e-safety. We've done an awful lot of work on e-safety, and we now have an e-safety quality mark. And again, it's just best practice. You know, it's stuff that you will be doing in schools already. Generally, however, parents were really excited by it and really on board. We had a couple of parents, or we've had a couple of parents who have objected, and that's over this last 3 years, but it's literally 2 families. One of them was concerned a little bit about Wi-Fi. I did explain that Wi-Fi was in school anyway. You know, that was nothing to do with what we were doing, but they were a bit concerned about the health implications of Wi-Fi in school. And another parent was just a bit concerned about Google and Google's reputation for collecting data. I did explain to them, you know, that's all in the Google's paperwork, how they use this data and so on. So, you know, I think sometimes people just need some reassurance and things. But generally, the parents have been very on board, and particularly because now what happens, because our Chromebooks go home, parents can very quickly see what their children are doing. They can share the work that's happened in the class. They can have a look at how children are, where we looked at that sharing process. They can be part of that. We've also introduced a a system in school. It's another free app. The great thing about these things, we have spent money on the Chromebooks, we've spent money on the filtering system, and other than that, other than a few subscription-based things with maths, we've not spent a penny. We've not spent anything on software. So G Suite, Google Apps for Education, all that, it all comes pretty much for free. But yeah, we have a system called Class Dojo, and again, some of you may already have that. It's primarily a behaviour management system that gives children sort of points as they do something well. But teachers can have it on their computers, they can have it on their phones. You spot a child doing something nice around school, give them a dojo. It then pops up on their parents' phone. Parents install the app and link it. So the parent, you know, can be in the middle of their working day, phone gives them a little notification. Oh, your son's just been awarded a dojo from Mr. McCarthy for being polite and helpful. So things like that have been great, but the system also lets you share lots of work. We share a lot of, Class Dojo provides you with a kind of in-house social media system. So it's a closed system. The outdoor world can't get to it, but parents can access it, see what's been happening in school, can have a bit of dialogue between the teacher and so on. So I think generally, in fact, almost unanimously, really, it's been a real success amongst parents. And it's funny, you know, 3 years on, it's almost become, well, it's just the norm. You know, parents don't see it as anything different. It's just taken for granted. That's what we do. And it's interesting when you get other schools coming and having a look, or when we have parents going to other schools, or we have new parents coming in. You know, wow, this is amazing. So yeah, it's been adopted in a real positive manner, I think, by all involved.
That's great, Harvey. Can you just touch a little bit more on the maths and how you've been able to use the same Chromebooks and Google resources and some of the other resources? I think you mentioned Mathletics. How you've been able to use those products to improve the maths and numeracy?
Yeah. Our first year, as I said at the beginning, the vision was it was all about writing. That's what we needed to improve. That was the priority on our school development plan. We've got to get this writing cracked. So after the first year, it was like, oh, do you know what? We've cracked writing. Obviously, we haven't. We're still working on it. But, you know, we'd got the results that we were searching for. And so the second year, the focus changed a little bit, and it was more about maths. And in the same way I mentioned about professional development and performance management, we did the same in the second year. We just moved the focus to maths. So it was all about producing more experiences for collaboration and for interactive work using the Chromebooks, but in mathematics rather than in writing so much. And I think maths is more difficult to crack, because when it's writing, you know, somebody can look at a piece of writing and see exactly what that person has written. They can see exactly where they've maybe made some errors, and they can see exactly where they might be able to improve it. With maths, generally you see an answer and it's either right or it's wrong. And so looking at opportunities to collaborate in the how do we do the working out together and so on took a little bit more thinking about. But again, through the use of sharing, this time documents, but also presentations and spreadsheets, it allowed for that a little bit more. But also, I think we have in school, and we certainly had in school, various bought-in kind of subscription things like Mathletics. We have various other ones. Interactive Resources is one of my favourites. That's a really good and very cheap system. But there's also loads of stuff out there that's just free, you know, website stuff with interactive games and things. Let's face it, learning your times tables is quite a dull thing, you know, and you give children times tables to learn and they go home with their little pieces of paper, and we'd like to think they spend hours then rehearsing them at night, but you know, it's not exactly the most entertaining thing to learn your times tables. Whereas with the interactive side of that, we have an app, for example, called Times Tables Rockstars, where there's all league tables and it's all gamification stuff. You've got to get to the next level, and to do that, you've got to improve your last score. Suddenly, you've got there a bit of competition, you've got interaction, you've got rewards with, you know, online badges and creating your characters and things. And I think just that really helps to get the children bought in and to try and nail those key skills, which are actually, until you've got the times tables, until you've got number bonds and so on, going much further, it becomes quite difficult. And so I think it's really helped us to build on the resources we already had, but actually just make a lot more use of them.
Harvey, can you also make explain the use of video for teachers explaining concepts?
I totally forgot about that. So another thing that we've done quite a lot of in this second and third year is we really encourage pupils and teachers now to do like little videos. So if you're explaining, let's say, explaining the concept of multiplication, and you want to show how to do a formal multiplication, what we do is we get the children or the teacher to do that, and we video it. And we kind of have this rule where no video must be longer than 2 minutes, because after 2 minutes it's starting to get a bit dull. So we get those key facts down, key explanation, and it's videoed, but then it's all held up in the cloud and children can access that. So if they get stuck on how to do a multiplication in the future, they can say, oh, hang on, I know I can get that, I can access that. They can see their teacher once again explaining to them how to do the multiplication, and it answers some of that. So I think for getting children to work more independently, that's a real plus point, because you're giving children those resources which traditionally may have resulted in putting your hand up because I'm stuck. You're saying now to children, well, actually, you get stuck with something, you've got this bank of resources you can go to, a growing bank of videos that are going to explain things in a familiar way, or maybe it's your friend explaining to you how to do it. That really has helped as well. And again, that's all available when the children go home. It's available in class. It's available to them at all times. So, really important stuff. And I think, we've talked quite a lot there about pupil premium children and the disadvantaged groups. We're also, as a school, we're very keen to look at research that's gone on, and the research that says that peer mentoring, metacognition, marking and feedback are some of the key things you can do to really improve standards in your school. Well, I think the Chromebooks and this technology has really helped to cement those areas as well, and to back up those areas, because now children are much more independent. They can work with each other and collaborate, give that feedback to each other. Is that all right, Ian? Has that gone somewhere?
Yeah, no, that's fine, and I'm sure that people we can share more information in the notes following the presentation. We're running into the last 10 minutes, Harvey, so I think we need to now move on.
Yeah, no problem. So just very quickly, I'll scoot over these bits a bit more quickly. Where are we now? What else has happened? I mentioned we are now a completely cloud-based school. We don't have any data stored in the building. We've removed all our Windows machines, including the server. Now, that was a bit of a mission of mine, really. I never was keen on having a server in school. We didn't really need it. It just created a lot of problems for us and took a lot of maintenance. We don't have a maintenance contract now for IT. We don't have an IT technician in school because we can manage it all ourselves. We started talking earlier, the leadership, management, the staffing, the admin, we all use Google Apps for Education now. We just use that. That's all we do. I don't have a Windows laptop anymore. I go to meetings and so on. I take my Chromebook with me. We do a lot of data analysis. We talked earlier about Google Forms. Just going to show you now what that pulls out. So something that we never thought of until we thought of it. There's a quote for you. Something that we never thought we were going to do is this. We put our accident book online. And so a child has an accident. It's what's the name of the child, what class are they in, what year group, when did it happen, where did it happen, any other notes. But then very quickly, I can analyze that data. So I can see here that the majority of accidents happen on a lunchtime. Well, that's fair enough. Lunchtime is the longest period that children are outside playing. But what I can also see from looking at that straight away is, well, Tuesdays, there aren't anywhere near as many accidents. And on a Wednesday, afternoon break, we seem to have a ridiculous amount of accidents there really compared to Monday and Tuesday. So what's happening there? So it straight away analyzes some of this data, which traditionally could have taken you an awful long time to go through. So now I'm out there on a Wednesday afternoon saying, okay, what's happening? I realize we're understaffed. You know, the person that used to do duty has gone on maternity leave, and so there's a man down. That didn't actually happen. I'm just making that up. But you get the point. It asks those questions, and as leaders, we then go and try and find out what's happening. Likewise here, we can see from the location, majority of accidents happen on our big playground. That's where they run around and play TIG. So have we got any solutions for that? Can we make the game of TIG a little bit safer for the children, and so on? So that's an area that we now use Google Forms for. Again, it's a free thing, that. But you can do exactly this sort of stuff with assessment. You can do exactly this sort of stuff with behavior. Anything you want to analyze, put it into here. It gives it you straight away. We also, all the children have targets which they keep on Google Keep. This is a little bit like Evernote, which I know some of you guys out there that are doing metacognition and so on, you'll be be familiar with. So children have access to these. So Kaylee here, this is her word wall. So these are words that she's perhaps spelt wrong repeatedly and just wants to keep an idea of those. We have vocabulary walls and so on for specific subjects and things. Children also keep their targets on here. And again, these are shared with the teacher, so the teacher can access these. They can tick them off as they get them. But what they can also do is add hyperlinks to these. So read, write and order numbers to 1000, click on it, brings up a resource that Kaylee can then go off and work on that. So again, really brings that independent learning in. It means that the learning goes into the home because mum and dad can help out then with the targets and so on. So really useful application, and again, absolutely free. And I think I also already mentioned our Chromebooks. Our Acer Chromebooks still going really strong 3 years on. And realistically, I think, you know, they've got at least another couple of years in them. They're showing no signs, particularly considering the amount of use they get, no signs of wearing out. I think it's really important to think about your administration. A cloud-based MIS is, well, it's not a must, but it's really useful. We use one called ScholarPack, although again, there are other systems out there. But whereas in the past, your MIS will have needed quite a decent computer to run, you could just run it on a Chromebook, you just run it on a phone, wherever you want, you can get at it, it's accessible from anywhere. You can get it on other devices, so teachers go on school trips, they don't need all that information for contacts and so on, they can just on their phone if they need to get in touch with somebody. And it means a lot of the tasks that admin maybe traditionally do, you can hand over to staff, you can hand over to your leadership team, so pulling reports out and things. We can do that at home now. If we want to analyse some attendance data, I can just access that at home. Our staff in the morning, they do the register online, but they also do the lunch register online. So straight away, the number of hot dinners we're serving is being calculated, how many different options are calculated, so who wants jacket potatoes, who wants sandwiches, who wants hot dinners, all of that's done very, very quickly and it's all automated. And also bringing admin over to G Suite, so moving from Microsoft Word to G Suite, Google Apps for Education. If you get that happening in the admin, then it means your whole school are going to be talking the same language. Now, Office documents, as I said, do transfer over, but you know, realistically, as a school, we thought it was important that everybody was using the same thing. And finally, governing bodies as well. There's no reason that governors can't start using this this technology. So we give all of our governors access to Chromebooks, and we've given them some training, so they know how to do the sharing and so on. But what's been a real plus for us is the sharing of agendas and documents. So take you into there. So here's a document that I produced for the governing body. It's just a quick rundown, brief rundown of our key priorities for the school development plan. But you can see there, one of our governors, before the meeting has actually happened, is able to ask some questions. So can we break these down into half-termly steps? and then I'm able to respond to that. And then another governor's asked about premises and could we look at a different option and so on. So it means that you're not getting a nasty surprise when you walk into a meeting and somebody asks that really awkward question that you weren't prepared for. And likewise, from a governor's point of view or whoever's point of view, really, they can clear up anything that they're not sure of before the meeting actually starts. Makes for a much quicker and more productive meeting all round. I think we've got a bit of time now for questions and discussion and so on. I think I'd just like to mention, though, the one thing, when we looked at data, the one thing that I didn't mention is, some of that soft data that you can't measure. So when you walk around our school, people are always commenting, wow, are the children good? They're always on task. They're always working. And it's true, it's something which the children are excited by this. They can access their learning and they just get on with it. As I said, quite often I will get emails on an evening, anytime between 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock at night, from children. They've written a story and they want to share it with me, or they've done a presentation all about dogs and they've shown it to their collaboration partner and now they're sharing it with all the staff. It has its down points in so much as you're forever getting emails for children's work, but for children to be going home and taking these skills and these procedures that we've put in place for their learning and then they're just doing it in the home is absolutely fantastic. And final point, we talked a little bit and a bit of a sweeping generalization here, but on the improvement in writing, the one thing we found was it frees up. We did talk about handwriting, but it frees children up from the mechanics of handwriting. And sweeping generalization, some of our disadvantaged boys were quite difficult to engage in the writing process. And we had one boy in particular, first year we did this, assessment old money. He was a borderline level 3, level 4 going into year 6. By the time he left, he was a level 6. And we'd taken this chap who never saw himself as a writer. He wasn't really bothered by it. He struggled with the whole process. He wasn't very neat or anything else. He was quite slow. To suddenly, we unlocked all this imagination, this flair, this skill that he had trapped inside him. And suddenly it was flowing out. And we'd given him the vehicle in which to do that communication. And I think that is such a powerful thing for what we can get out of these. And so many of our children now, it's leveled the playing field for them. And whereas we used to look over at the child next to us and go, well, their handwriting's nice, mine's not, I'm not a good writer, they are. Everybody's now on the same playing field. So it's really, really helped for those children who actually are good writers if you just give them the opportunity to do so.
That's a great point to stop with, Harvey. We've just got one question about the switch from your old laptops and Windows machines to Chromebooks. Did you trade ones in? Did you get anything for them when you disposed of them?
We ended up selling the majority of our machines to other schools in the area. So, we recognised that a lot of schools weren't ready to do what we're doing. And we had all this tech sat here, which, to be honest, we were going to end up having to recycle one way or another. So we just put out some emails to local schools and said, we've got some laptops, we've got some desktops. We've still got some smart boards, if anybody's interested, that we were trying to get rid of, really. So, we weren't out to make money on it, but anything we got back, that was great. So I think we ended up selling computers for about £50 a go. But it's worth mentioning, when we went to the cloud, what we also did, and I sort of left this running over a weekend, it's very easy to upload all your existing data and all your existing documents and so on to the cloud. And when you do so, they automatically convert to Google applications and Google Docs. So I went on the server one Friday night and basically uploaded the whole of our history up to the cloud. So we've not lost anything in doing this. It's not that we, lost all those letters and, all that assessment data and everything that we used to have sat on our old server. We've just uploaded it and it's now just accessible. So that transfer over is probably a lot easier than you may imagine, but just take your time. It's worth mentioning, Ian, actually, we've not mentioned about Wi-Fi. You've got to get your Wi-Fi infrastructure sorted out. You know, these things run on Wi-Fi, they run via the internet. So get the Wi-Fi sorted, make sure you've got a decent internet connection. There are a couple of very important points. I think if you've not got those, it can lead to frustrations.
Yeah, I completely agree. Get your internet and Wi-Fi right. I've got one final question before we push to the last slide, which is when the Chromebooks are taken home by the students, how you make sure that they don't look at inappropriate internet use. And perhaps, Harvey, I can just say that your addition of Go Guardian, which is a web-based filtering sort of resource, together with the fact that you can actually restrict who can log into the Chromebooks. So you can make it such that only with a school Google Apps account can you actually open up the Chromebook, and then whether that Chromebook is in sort of a home or McDonald's or wherever else, then all of the traffic goes to Go Guardian. And before it goes out onto the internet, that allows the safe and secure sort of environment to continue the learning outside school. So I think Go Guardian and other products like that, certainly if the devices are being taken home, I think they are essential. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. We wouldn't have bothered probably with Go Guardian other than when we decided, and again, catchy title for you, we named it the Chrome at Home project. When we went down that line and decided, right, we really got to take this learning now and put it into the home, that's when we looked at those products. As you mentioned there, Ian, built into the Chromebook management side of things, very easy to manage and things like that, is the idea that once you've got your Chromebooks in school, only people from school can log into them. So you can't log into them with a normal Gmail address, for example, or something like that. It's only children who have got their accounts and usernames and passwords. They're the only ones that can log in, or members of staff. As you said, when it goes home, we can monitor what's happening. It still filters and things like that. So they can't get onto Facebook, they can't get onto eBay or anything that you wouldn't want children going on. But what's also built into it is a tracking system. So if one of your machines gets stolen, you can go into this software and say, okay, this machine's gone. We don't know where it is. And it will then track its location using Wi-Fi. You've got various options. You can lock the machine down to make it completely useless, or you can make it so it's still usable, but it will track it, so you can quite easily pass that information and that intelligence onto the police. So again, from a security point of view, absolutely fantastic.
No, that's great, Harvey. And I know we've run over time, so we'll finish after this final point. And thanks for the comments about Neverware and being able to upgrade older devices. The final question was this, Harvey. Thinking of Year 6 constraints and prospects of writing moderation, what would moderators be shown? A mixture of pencil and paper and work on Google Docs? How do you, when people come to assess the students' work, where does that go?
Well, as I said, we're about 50% pen and paper, 50% electronic, and we don't print out every piece of work that the child does, but what we do is we have target children right the way through school from Year 3 to Year 6. And with those target children, we do print out the work that they produce. So in each class, we have 3 or 4 target children, usually high, mid, low prior ability, prior attainment, and an SEN child. And their work is printed out, put into a portfolio. So it's very easy to look at that in a paper-based way, but also to access, I mean, what we didn't talk about there actually, Ian, was Google Classroom, which again comes as part of G Suite. It manages how you send out work and so on. So if you've got a document you want to send to your class, you do it through Classroom. And so those timetables, we'd send those out through Classroom. It gives each child their own copy. They then do their work on it. You can then very quickly access every child's piece of work. So it's very quick and easy actually to just log onto a machine. If you wanted to look at what works happened, if somebody wanted to moderate a particular child, they can go onto a machine. They can see every piece of work that that child's ever done, and they can click into it and look at that on screen and print it if they so wish.
No, that's fine. I'm sure there's more that we could ask in terms of transferring to high school and whatever else. But what we'll have to do now is just bring the presentation to a close. On the screen at the moment is just some information about the range of Chromebooks, and if you have been to BET or followed a lot of the developments, what you'll see is the introduction of styluses, so reinforcing handwriting on these types of devices. But the point is, all of them are safe and secure and shareable across staff and students, and manageable, and as Harvey's explained, affordable. If you could just put the last slide up for us, Harvey, please. We'd like to again thank you for taking your time out of what I'm sure is a busy days just before the end of term to listen to the presentation. If there are things that Harvey has shared through the presentation where you think, yeah, I'd like to understand more, then Harvey's very happy to have people contact him or visit him. We're also here to support you in terms of any questions that you might have about Google Suite for Education or Acer Chromebooks. And Paul's contact details are there on the screen, and you'll have those through the emails that he's done. Finally, I'd just like to again thank the team at Acer and Intel for their support for these webinars, and Paul will be sending out sort of a link to the recording so you can look at it again and share that with any of your colleagues. So with that, Harvey, thank you again on behalf of everyone, and this is a wrap. Thank you very much, and the webinar now closes.
Thank you, Ian.